The battlefield smelled like burnt metal and scorched ozone, the kind of scent that made even the hardiest soldiers wrinkle their noses and mutter something about regretting breakfast. Seraphine moved through it like she owned the chaos, though the truth was she barely noticed the explosions. Her long ears twitched at the smallest sound, the subtle hum of energy shields, the hiss of a plasma cannon charging, the awkward thump of a human dropping his pack in panic. She found it all faintly amusing, a grand symphony of chaos orchestrated for her amusement. She had been deployed here for a simple purpose: weaken human morale, demonstrate alien superiority, and enjoy a little casual hunting along the way. Nothing complicated. Seraphine had the kind of face that made humans pause, a perfect symmetry, pale skin, sharp cheekbones, but the ears gave her away, curling slightly at the tips, betraying her alien nature no matter how much she tried to pass for human. And today, as she weaved between the splintered remains of armored vehicles and the twisted skeletons of fallen drones, she wondered how long it would take for someone to notice them. Not that it mattered. If they did, she would probably end up with a fan club, and she had better things to do, like testing new human flavors. Her target was easy enough: a small contingent of soldiers huddled around a makeshift barricade, arguing over rations and which human-made weapon could theoretically take her down. Seraphine crouched on a ledge above them, observing, noting how their coordination was less than stellar. One soldier was using a tablet upside down, convinced it was a holographic map, while another argued loudly about the merits of caffeinated energy drinks over synthetic protein bars. The absurdity made her lips twitch in a near smile. Humans were so easily distracted, yet so stubbornly persistent. She dropped silently into the chaos, landing behind the soldier who seemed to be yelling at his tablet. His heartbeat raced, a rhythmic drum she could almost taste. She leaned in closer, inhaling, and prepared for the familiar surge of dominance, the thrill that came from tasting a human. And then she bit. It should have been simple. It should have been the rush she was accustomed to, the intoxicating pull of a new life force filling her. But instead, her hands trembled, her knees quivered, and a strange warmth bloomed across her chest, so unexpected it almost made her gag. The soldier flinched, startled, but more than that, he looked curious. He blinked up at her, wide-eyed and completely unconcerned about being bitten. Wow," he said. "That's different. Not bad though, I mean, alien cuisine, huh?" Seraphine froze, pulling back slowly, long ears flicking like nervous antennae. Alien cuisine? He was making jokes at the wrong moment. She had half expected him to scream or faint, not critique her technique like some intergalactic food critic. "Excuse me," she said, voice sharper than intended, though her words faltered under the weight of her own confusion. "Nothing, nothing," he said, waving his hands like he was brushing off a minor inconvenience. "Just a nice bite." "Really, crisp, clean, not too much drama. I like drama in movies, but not here, you know." Seraphine blinked, momentarily disarmed. She had heard of humans who were brave, reckless, or foolish, but none who responded to being bitten with humor. The absurdity of it hit her, and despite the pounding of battle all around, she snorted quietly, a sound entirely unlike her usual cold precision. Her ears twitched, betraying her amusement. "You humans are stranger than I thought," she muttered, half to herself, half to him. He chuckled nervously, clearly unsure if she was going to attack again or just continue lecturing him about the taste of his blood. "Yeah, well, stranger than normal is kind of our thing. Keeps things interesting. You aliens, though, you're a little too serious. Maybe lighten up a bit." Seraphine narrowed her eyes but found herself laughing quietly, a soft sound that echoed weirdly over the battlefield. Her teeth, sharp and deadly, now seemed slightly ridiculous as she thought about the awkward encounter. The soldier, for his part, had the nerve to smile at her, a crooked, sheepish grin that would have annoyed anyone else, but somehow it made her feel unsettled. Curious, dangerous, and she didn't like feeling all three at once. She straightened, forcing herself to regain composure, even as she noticed that she hadn't felt this before, this rush that wasn't power, wasn't hunger, wasn't victory, but something altogether different. She flexed her fingers, tested her fangs, all the while stealing glances at the human soldier who had, by some cosmic joke, survived the encounter with a grin instead of a scream. "Maybe I'll just pretend that didn't happen," she said, though she knew it was a lie. Her long ears twitched in irritation or maybe anticipation. She couldn't tell which. Above them, the alien drones zipped and buzzed, firing sporadic plasma beams that either missed completely or obliterated their targets in a spectacularly messy display. One hit a crate of synthetic rations, sending them scattering like confetti, and the soldier laughed, slipping on a half-melted energy bar as he scrambled to avoid another blast. Seraphine considered intervening but paused, realizing that the scene was almost comical enough to warrant watching a little longer. Even in war, humans had a peculiar knack for chaos and for humor. By the time reinforcements arrived, Seraphine had slipped back into the shadows, though she kept glancing at the soldier. Something about him made her pause, made her reconsider the usual rules of engagement. She wasn't supposed to care, certainly wasn't supposed to laugh, and definitely wasn't supposed to feel anything beyond satisfaction. Yet here she was, ears twitching, heart racing in an entirely inappropriate way, and silently debating whether the universe had just played the most elaborate prank on her. And if it had, well, she would admit, just barely, that it was a rather effective one. Seraphine's return to the alien encampment was less than triumphant, though she tried to convince herself otherwise. The towering, metallic structures hummed with energy, and the air smelled of ozone and burnt circuits, a smell she had grown to find comforting in a strange, perverse way. Her comrades, a ragtag assortment of alien warriors with a taste for sarcasm and a fondness for unnecessary weaponry, had already begun whispering about her little incident on the battlefield. She could hear it in the way the drone technicians muttered while adjusting their hovering repair units, in the way the 8-armed tactician, Colin, tilted his head and smirked like she owed him a favor. Well, Trembling Seraphine returns, Colin said, dangling a plasma whip casually over one shoulder. Did the human taste bad, or were you simply overcome with feelings? Her ears twitched, sharp tips brushing against her hair. I assure you, nothing of the sort happened. I merely miscalculated the flavor profile, she replied, keeping her tone formal though she felt the warmth creeping up her neck. Miscalculating flavor profile, she thought. Ridiculous. That was her excuse, and she would cling to it with the stubbornness of a dying star. Colin's grin widened. Ah yes, flavor profiles, that must be it. I've heard humans have a tendency to surprise, very pungent at times. He gave a mock shiver, and she wanted to roll her eyes, though the movement of her ears betrayed her faint amusement. Meanwhile, the human soldier she had bitten, Private Jenkins, was still alive, which was technically a miracle, though he would never call it that. In the aftermath, he had begun experiencing odd residual effects from the encounter. He muttered alien phrases in his sleep, sometimes swearing softly in Seraphine's language when trying to assemble a ration pack, and occasionally catching himself humming a melody that wasn't quite human. His fellow soldiers stared at him suspiciously, but he just shrugged, as if the universe had finally decided to prank him personally. Back in the encampment, Seraphine attempted to continue her duties, which involved overseeing the calibration of energy cannons, assigning minor tactical operations, and occasionally lecturing drones about the proper way to explode things without causing unnecessary structural damage. Yet she found her mind wandering, replaying the Trembling incident over and over. Why had she felt that surge of warmth, that confusion, that inexplicable attraction? She had tasted humans before, countless times, and never had an encounter produced this reaction. She tried to shake it off by interrogating a captured human drone, a compact unit that buzzed nervously and occasionally emitted a low whistle when she approached. She leaned over, intending to extract intelligence, but the drone's programming had a flaw. It delivered jokes instead of useful information. Why did the human cross the asteroid belt? It asked in a tiny mechanical voice. To get to the other nebula, ha ha, its circuits buzzed as if laughing at its own punchline. Seraphine stared, long ears twitching. It was absurd, she should have been angry, she should have crushed it. But she couldn't help a small laugh escaping, almost soft enough to go unnoticed. The encampment's mess hall buzzed with activity, a mix of aliens discussing strategies, humans being experimented on for morale-weakening tactics, and drones zipping about delivering food rations that were often exploded by accident. Seraphine's humor didn't go unnoticed. One of the junior officers leaned close, whispering, "You're enjoying yourself, admit it. Humans are fascinating." Her response was a low growl that bordered on amusement. Fascinating, yes, perhaps, but not enough to compromise the mission. I do not enjoy anything. Her ears flicked, though, betraying her lack of conviction. At night, in her private quarters, Seraphine examined the human soldier in her mind repeatedly. Jenkins, with his crooked smile and inexplicable resilience, had somehow invaded her thoughts. She tried imagining him dead, imagining herself indifferent, imagining herself somewhere else entirely, but he always returned, grinning like an idiot at the wrong time, cracking some joke about alien fashion or the aesthetics of long ears. She found herself sighing, which was absurd. She, a predator, sighing over a human who should have terrified her. A small alert buzzed, and she went to investigate. The encampment's security drones had detected movement near the perimeter, a minor breach, probably another foolish human patrol. She followed the signals, noting that the humans often underestimated the terrain, tripping over their own feet or arguing about tactical theory in the midst of gunfire. One particularly loud human yelled, "If the aliens want us, they'll have to come through our superior rations." And the group laughed, oblivious to the approaching plasma fire. Seraphine's ears twitched. Superior rations, really? She considered intervening just to prevent the human from making himself a permanent mess of interstellar spaghetti, but decided against it. The absurdity was too entertaining. Hours later, she sat on a high ledge, long ears draped over her shoulders, watching as the humans fumbled with their barricades. One tripped over a stray energy cable and fell flat on his face, only to shout indignantly about gravity cheating again, and Seraphine's lips twitched in what could almost pass for a smile. She felt a strange warmth, a mixture of amusement and something more confusing, blooming in her chest. If someone had told her yesterday that she would find human clumsiness endearing, she would have laughed and bitten them on principle. But the truth was undeniable. Something about these humans, their ridiculous bravery, their nonsensical humor, and their ability to survive what should have been fatal encounters was compelling. She flexed her fingers, tested her fangs absent-mindedly, and let out a low hum, a sound she didn't bother to explain. Even predators needed breaks from their own predicaments. By dawn, the battlefield was quiet for the moment, punctuated by the occasional distant explosion or confused shout from a human soldier arguing with a malfunctioning energy rifle. Seraphine stayed in her post, observing, thinking, and slowly realizing that the war was no longer just a game of hunting or victory. It had become a tangled mess of curiosity, humor, and dangerous fascination. And if the universe had intended for her to navigate the absurdity of human behavior while maintaining her status as a predator, well, she would have to admit, just barely, that it was an intriguing challenge. The Trembling incident lingered in her mind like an unwelcome but strangely pleasant shadow. Jenkins, that human, had done something no other had, forced her to question the simplicity of her instincts, the clarity of her mission, and the meaning of her own reactions. She wasn't supposed to care, she wasn't supposed to laugh, and she certainly wasn't supposed to find amusement in a human tripping over an energy bar. Yet here she was, ears flicking, lips twitching, heart racing, and wondering if this war, this chaos, might just be a little less predictable than she had originally thought. And perhaps, she thought with a faint smirk, that unpredictability wasn't entirely unwelcome. The orbital station shuddered under the strain of incoming fire, its metal skeleton groaning like a tired old warhorse. Seraphine moved through the corridors with her usual grace, ears twitching at every creak and hiss, every distant echo of a laser beam ricocheting against reinforced hull plating. This mission had gone off script almost immediately. The human soldier she had bitten, Private Jenkins, had somehow survived the battlefield in a way that defied logic, common sense, and several interstellar safety protocols. Now, the universe had paired them together for a mission that could have been a disaster, but somehow promised to be far more entertaining. They ducked into a side corridor as a blast rocked the main hall. Jenkins scrambled beside her, muttering about the architect's poor sense of spatial design. Seriously, who builds a station with 90-degree corners in zero gravity? You can't even run without colliding with something. Seraphine's ears twitched. Humans complain about everything, it's rather charming in an irritating way. Charming and irritating, huh? Jenkins grinned, brushing dust from his jacket. Sounds like a good date, actually. Minus the explosions. She shot him a sharp look, but the corner of her mouth twitched. She didn't laugh, not quite, but the warmth in her chest threatened to betray her. She had been a predator, a cold-blooded vampire alien trained to strike fear into every being unfortunate enough to cross her path. And yet, here she was, navigating the chaos of collapsing corridors with a human who made jokes in the middle of potentially fatal scenarios, and discovering that she enjoyed it. Not just endured it, enjoyed it. The station shuddered again, a panel peeling away to reveal the swirling void outside. A drone burst through the opening, sparks flying as it tried to intercept them. Jenkins raised his rifle instinctively, though he had little idea how to aim in zero gravity. The shot missed spectacularly, ricocheting off the wall and nearly hitting Seraphine. She barely had to move. Her reflexes were precise, predatory. The drone crashed with a high-pitched whine and Jenkins muttered, "Okay, maybe I need lessons. Or maybe the universe is conspiring against my aim." "Lesson 1, Seraphine said, crouching and flicking her ears. "Do not hit me with your weapon. Lesson 2, do not die. Lesson 3, humor is essential for survival even if it's disturbing." Jenkins raised an eyebrow. "Disturbing? I'm hilarious, just ask my mom." They moved deeper into the station, encountering sporadic resistance from automated defense units. Each skirmish was punctuated by their banter, a rhythm of absurdity and survival. Jenkins joked about alien fashion while ducking behind a bulkhead. Seraphine muttered sarcastic remarks about the inefficiency of human reflexes while dispatching a drone with a precise flick of her wrist. In these moments, the tension of war faded into the background, replaced by a strange, shared rhythm that made both of them aware of a bond neither could fully articulate. At the station's core, they found the control room under heavy attack. Plasma streams arced dangerously close as Seraphine calculated their path. Jenkins groaned. "Of course the room we need to save is also the one that's actively trying to kill us." "Perfect." Seraphine glanced at him, sharp eyes catching the ridiculousness of his expression. "Do humans always whine at imminent death?" "Only the ones who survive," he replied with a grin. They worked together, Seraphine's instincts and agility complementing Jenkins' stubborn resourcefulness. She manipulated energy locks and power conduits with fluid precision, while he ran diagnostics, jammed errant systems, and occasionally quipped about the absurdity of being saved by a vampire alien woman with exceptionally long ears. By the time the station's emergency system stabilized, both were exhausted, smeared with dust and sparks, but alive. And in that survival, an unspoken understanding had formed. Trust, respect, and perhaps something more dangerous had taken root. Seraphine's ears flicked at the sound of approaching reinforcements. She had expected orders, debriefings, reprimands. Instead, she found Jenkins leaning against a console, grinning at her with an expression that was equal parts exasperation and admiration. "You're not so bad," he said, eyes twinkling. "For an alien predator with fangs that could remove my head if you felt like it." "And you," she replied, letting her voice soften in a way she had not intended, "are far too resilient for your own good." Her ears twitched again, this time in amusement rather than tension. She realized in a startling moment of clarity that she had changed. Where once she had only measured outcomes in terms of conquest and survival, she now measured them in moments of absurdity, of connection, of laughter even amidst danger. Jenkins chuckled, "So, dinner sometime, I promise not to trip over energy bars this time." Seraphine paused. The thought should have been irrelevant, but she found herself considering it, imagining something outside of war, outside of duty, outside of predictable outcomes. Her heart, alien, trained for precision and control, beat in rhythm with something unpredictable. "Perhaps," she said finally, a word that carried more weight than she intended. Her ears twitched, betraying her nerves, and she allowed herself the faintest smile. As they prepared to leave the station with the incoming reinforcements, Seraphine glanced back at the chaos they had survived. The war was far from over, but she understood now that victory was not measured solely in destruction or conquest. It was measured in the moments when the impossible became possible, when humor punctuated fear, when connections formed where none should have existed. Jenkins bumped her lightly with his shoulder. "Ready?" he asked. Seraphine's ears twitched, a silent acknowledgement of trust and camaraderie. "Ready," she said. And for the first time in her existence, she felt a strange sort of excitement. Not for the hunt, not for the kill, but for the unpredictable journey that lay ahead, shared with a human who had taught her that war, humor, and even love could coexist in the strangest of universes. As they moved into the corridor together, the station stabilizing behind them, Seraphine realized something profound.